or authentic cadence, but ending with me in the melody, and then half cadence, and then perfect authentic cadence, really final sounding and done.
That's not really my question. If
Oh,
we're
okay.
trying to determine if it's 2 periods versus a double period,
Okay.
but the double period is a contrasting double period,
Oh,
then how do you decipher, well, it's a double period, but they sound different?
yeah, you're gonna have to look for, I mean, you got to look for differences in melody, like what, does, in the double period, you're looking, is this one and this one the same or different? Really, that's the first phrase usually.
Okay.
The second phrase, very often you'll find that they're sort of similar, like here just a little bit, and then they just go off on their own.
Okay.
So you're looking for parallelism, you're looking for melodic similarities here and here. And if they're there, then it's parallel, a parallel double period.
Right.
If they're not there, which you could have a completely different melody here and still end in a half cadence, then they're it was a contrasting double period.
But if the definition of a double period is that the 2 periods are similar,
No. The definition of the double period really is that you've got 2 periods together, and the first period ends with some sort of incomplete cadence, and the next one goes on to a perfect authentic cadence.
okay, so, how can I phrase this? If we're looking to determine if the double period is parallel or contrasting, because you said that can happen, right?
Yeah.
It would seem that by definition, if it's contrasting, that the 2 periods are not similar. So how can it be a double period, which the definition requires that they're similar? And I get the difference between the IAC and the
Yeah,
PAC.
okay, I see what you're saying,
So
yeah.
I get that if the second phrase ends with a PAC, then they're not double periods.
Right.
That won't be the case.
Yeah.
But it seems like the only way it would be a double period is if both periods were similar.
Well, but there are 2 things going on here. One is the cadence structure at the end of each phrase. And the other one is the melodic materials, determining the parallelism or not.
So I get how they can be parallel, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Just in a double period, a parallel double period would end in an IAC with the melody in the first 3 quarters of both phrases,
Right.
say, being similar.
yeah.
But then how do you determine that it's a contrasting double?
And not just
period?
another separate period.
Right.
How do you determine it's not just period, and not just...
Even though it ends in, now, would one way to look at it be that if it's an IAC at the end of the second phrase, then it's possible it's a contrasting double period?
Yeah. Well, that's gonna have to be in place.
Right.
Because if you've got an incomplete sort of sounding cadence here, then the structure continues and you could look for a double period. But yeah, you're right.
I guess a double period is more than likely going to be similar.
Yeah, it's the parallel double period is probably the most common, especially in the classic era, the double period structure, the parallel one.
Right.
But I know in the book they have an example of a contrasting double period, and it makes sense.
Okay.
I think, it really more has to do with the structure of the 8 measures as a whole, or the 16 measures. How does it all play out so that it sounds like a unit, and not just 2 separate melodies that are...
So maybe if there was a similar rhythm, if there was similar beats on the notes, but maybe
Yeah.
not the same notes, or something like that.
Well, that's, you could have a similar rhythm and just do or have it, the melody drooped up a
transpose.
third, or,
Right.
or something like that.
Right.
And so
Because
there's...
that was sort of confusing to me when the assignment was prescribed. Because
Uh-huh.
it was, you could have 8 bars of parallel, or 4 bars each of contrasting.
Yeah.
And so it was, I couldn't really put my finger on that as to, well, what would be contrasting?
Uh-huh.
So that sort of plays into this.
Well, contrasting would be if the music's different, but I still
Yeah.
think you can put it into a double period. It's the cadence structure that actually determines the fact of the double period, not so much the melodies themselves, but the cadence, the
Okay.
structure of the cadence.
And certainly if it's a PAC
Four-
after phrase
four
2, you
phrases.
eliminate that it's double.
Yeah, exactly.
period,
If you
so-
have a PAC here, you're done. You've got 2 periods. Not that that's bad.
Right.
We all look at the double period and go, I want to write a parallel double period because it's just the most symmetrical, wonderful, largest structure I can possibly do. But you could easily write a Bach chorale with you know, in 2 separate periods, and it would be fine, you know?
Cool.
Okay, should we go on to the